The Civil Rights Movement was a big part of American history, but also played a big part in our sports history as well. Let's take a look at the NBA during the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. I'm Sami Hassan, and you're watching Overlooked. We all know Bill Russell's awards and championships he accumulated throughout his career, but there's one award that he received that outweighs all of those, and that's the Medal of Freedom given to him by President Barack Obama in 2011. We should try to understand why he received that award. What was his part in the Civil Rights Movement? But before we get to Bill Russell, we have to understand the history of integration of black players in the NBA. Before 1950, professional basketball was a segregated sport. In 1926, there was a team created in Chicago called Savoy Big Five for all black players. By 1929, a group of those players split and renamed the team to New York Harlem Globetrotters. The Globetrotters were a regular participant in the World Professional Basketball Tournament, which was held in Chicago from 1939 to 1948. Remember, Jackie Robinson integrated baseball by 1947, but throughout the existence of the tournament, there was no mixing of races on a team. The Globetrotters were treated very poorly as a team, and they had to sleep on the bus during the tournament as hotels were off-limit to black players. But despite being mistreated, the Globetrotters made history on February 1948 when they beat the best all-white team in the tournament, known as the Minneapolis Lakers. They didn't know it then, but that was the first step into integrating black players into an all-white league. By 1950, the NBA made history when Chuck Cooper was drafted in the second round by the Boston Celtics, making him the first black player on the NBA roster. In 1950, Earl Lloyd and Nate Clifton also made the NBA. Together, all three broke the color barrier in the NBA. When Bill Russell joined the league in 1956, he said the league had an unofficial rule of having 15 black players maximum in the NBA. Although Russell was well known due to him winning championships right away in Boston, he was given a hard time for no reason except for the color of his skin. In 1961, in Lexington, Kentucky, a restaurant wouldn't see Bill Russell and his black teammates before the game, which was very common at the time. But Bill Russell had enough, and he decided to boycott the game as a groundbreaking statement against racial discrimination. To this day, Bob Cousy says he regrets playing in that game and not protesting with his fellow black teammates. In 1963, civil rights activist Medgar Evers was killed on his driveway. While Russell remained shocked, he was quick to action. After talking to Medgar's older brother, Russell traveled to Mississippi to open the city's first basketball camp. Despite being followed by Brian De La Beckwith, a KKK member and the person who killed Medgar, and other Klan members who stood across the street to intimidate Russell, he followed through with his promise to open up the camp. In 1963, Russell participated in the March on Washington, which is famously known as Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. The night before the speech, Martin Luther King Jr. requested Bill Russell to speak in front of the crowd, but Russell respectfully declined as he felt bad he didn't contribute enough to the march. Instead, Russell remained in the first row of the crowd. Despite winning 6 championships in 7 years at the time, Russell's house was robbed, vandalized, trophies destroyed, and the N-word spray painted across the walls by Boston fans who were furious with his activism. Russell stepped out of basketball to support other black athletes during the Civil Rights Movement. In June of 1967, one of the most famous photos we've all seen at the Cleveland Summit is Russell along with Jim Brown, Lowell Sanders, otherwise known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, supporting the late great Muhammad Ali's refusal to fight in the Vietnam War. On April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, which left everybody in shock, including Boston's player-coach Bill Russell. The NBA was set to tip off what is now considered to be Game 1 of the conference finals between the Celtics and Sixers, less than 24 hours after Martin Luther King Jr.'s death. A Russell vs. Chamberlain premier matchup was set, but neither wanted to play. Russell talked to Chamberlain hours before the game, and they both debated whether they should play or not. Chamberlain decided to take a team vote as he did not want to divide the locker room. Chamberlain lost the vote 7-2 in favor of playing. While Game 1 was played, Game 2 was postponed as President Lyndon B. Johnson called for a national day of mourning. Other players played a role in their off-the-court activism during the Civil Rights Movement. In 1968, Kareem was considered to be one of the greatest college athletes ever, but he decided to boycott the Olympics to protest the Jim Crow laws that kept the South segregated. Fast forward to 2020, global superstar players like LeBron James continue to actively fight for social injustice for the black community. So while we sit back and enjoy the NBA greats like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson, just know that Bill Russell paved the path for these guys, and it all started with Earl Lloyd, Chuck Cooper, and Nate Clifton. These icons mean a lot to the history of the NBA, and they should never be forgotten, because without them, the NBA history would be very different. Thank you for watching this episode of Overlooked. If you have any topics you would like me to discuss, please comment below. If you like what you watched, please subscribe. Thanks.